Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do our first hunt. What do you call it? A collection, a hunt, a haul of the local thrift stores. So, a thrift store haul, I guess you would call it, correct? All right, so today I thought we'd do our first thrift store haul, and I went around over the last few days. I went around to a lot of the thrift stores in my city, and I picked up some good stuff. I picked up 16 DVDs. I picked up like, was it seven? I think seven Blu-rays. One, two, three, four, five. So yeah, seven Blu-rays and three books. And I thought I'd go over them with you today, see what you think. Um, Many of these films I haven't seen, but I collect because of I collect films that I don't see. That's how you expand your knowledge, right? So that I haven't seen yet. I collect films that I haven't seen yet because that's how you expand your movie repertoire. And a lot of these are by directors that I enjoy collecting. I enjoyed their other movies, so I'll probably enjoy these ones as well. That's basically how I collect. Most of the films that I collect are by director. I'll watch a film, and if I enjoy that film, I'll seek out another film by that director, and then if I watch that, I enjoy that, and then he becomes part of my collection. I'll go out and search out all of his films and add them to my collection. That's basically how I collect mostly. All right. I mean, there are single films that I will go out and find and watch because I like them. Then I'll watch another film by that director, and none of the other films seem to connect with me. So it'll be like a one-off, as I call it, and I'll just have one from that director. But usually, when you collect a director or you watch a director's films, if you see one of them and you like it, you see another one you like it, you're probably going to like most of that director's filmography. All right, so that's usually so. I collected, like I said, 16 DVDs, seven Blu-rays, and three books, and I thought we'd go through it. All right, so the first, uh, I thought I'd do the DVDs first, then the Blu-rays, then the books. Okay, so um, you'll notice that I have a sticky note. I'll have a sticky note on each one of my DVDs or whatever, because in the past when I'm doing videos, I always seem to forget names, even though I know if I'm not on camera and I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm going to remember that name. And I'm going to tell them that name, or I'm having a conversation about movies or books or whatever. I usually remember names and dates and things like that. But for some reason, when a camera's pointing at me, I haven't gotten used to. I'm slowly getting that way. I haven't got used to um, doing things quick enough because you always want to do it quickly because you don't want to bore your watcher, right? So, and sitting there trying to think of names for like 5 minutes is going to bore the living crap out of the person that's watching. So you kind of get a bit apprehensive if you don't remember things straight off. So I figure I'd save you the trouble of me doing this, trying to remember. It'll happen a lot less if I just write names and dates down that I'm going to need when I talk about the film. All right. So that's what I do. All right. And I just put them in front of me. So if you see me looking down, it means I forgot something that I know already, but it's just popping out of my head. So I'll just look down at the sticky note, and the video will move quicker that way. Okay, so the first film is a Canadian film, all right, and it's directed by William Phillips, all right, and William Phillips directed this film. It's called Gunless, and it stars Paul Gross, who's probably the most successful actor in Canadian history. He's a Canadian icon, all right, and he's been in a lot of Canadian movies. And he got his name in I think, was it in the 80s? I think it was in the 80s or 90s. A TV show. It was like a collaboration between the United States and Canada TV show that was called Due South. If you remember that, if you haven't seen that, it's pretty good. It's pretty. It's got action in it. It's got comical kind of things in it, and it's actually catered to both Canadians and Americans. Basically, what it is Paul Gross plays a Canadian Mountie who ends up going on leave down to Detroit uh, to work with. I think it's Detroit. Is it Detroit or Chicago? I think it's Detroit. All right, because Detroit's the closest American city to the Canadian border, right? So I'm just thinking it's Detroit. So I goes to Detroit and works with a homicide detective in Detroit, and they go solve crimes together. So he's kind of on leave from the Mounties, working with an American detective, and the juxtaposition of that, a Canadian Mountie, all the stereotypes for a Canadian Mountie, and you know the reputation that Canadian Mounties have for being good and being right. I mean, one of the biggest is Dudley Do Right, isn't it? Anyway, um, so it's kind of comical because you know you got the gritty detective, you know he's got an edge to him because he's been working on the police force in a major uh, city in the United States, all the crime that's involved in American cities and that, and you have a Canadian guy that's a little bit you know more you know straight laced kind of thing. It's pretty comical, and the show is pretty funny. I'm not sure how many seasons it was, but it lasted for a few seasons, and a lot of Canadians watched that. I watched some episodes myself. And a lot of Canadians really loved that show, and I'm not sure what the ratings were in the States for that, but I think they were pretty good as well. Anyway, so it was called Due South, and it's a pretty. You should look for it if um, you haven't watched that show. See if you can find it on DVD or Blu-ray. All right, so Paul Gross, who was in that, is in this. He plays an American outlaw who crosses the border. All right, after being shot in the bum. um, and on his heels are a gang of bounty hunters who are looking for his head to collect the bounty off of him, all right, in the States. So he crosses the border into Canada on a horse, and he ends up coming to a town in Canada. Um, and the juxtaposition of the American, it takes place in I think 1860s, back, you know, in the frontier days where the the West was being, you know, populated and so on and so forth. So it's a juxtaposition of it's a Canadian film, so what they do is they kind of bring up the stereotypes of the differences between Canada and the United States in the film, and it is, I'm assuming because I haven't seen it, I can see how it would be humorous. It's kind of like playing on the differences and you know how the West was you know explored it and in the United States was you know settlers just went out there and gunslingers went out there and it was just like the wild quote the Wild West, right? Whereas in Canada we also went west as well, but we did it in a different way. We kind of the Canadian Railway went, and the mounted police went first, and then settlers kind of what came afterwards. So it was basically not the Wild West. It was more civilized, if you know, more you know, the law was there, whereas in the United States the law wasn't there. You know what I mean? So that difference, right? So basically, Paul Gross plays an American gunslinger, and he's in a town that has no guns. I mean, they have rifles, but they don't have any guns, right? And anyways, he's got to get used to this new culture, which is kind of humorous, and with these you know guys chasing after him and everything, right? So um, I think it'll be an entertaining film because William Phillips is a Canadian director, and he directed a film that I really enjoyed. It's one of my favorite Canadian films, and it was called Treed Murray. And this one came out in 2010. Treed Murray came out in 2001, and it starred, so now I can look, David Hewlett. All right, so David Hewlett is a very good Canadian actor. He was in some TV and film. In this film, he plays a guy who ends up in the park in Toronto and ends up being chased by hoodlums, and he ends up climbing up a tree. And the whole film is basically the hoodlums down below waiting for him to come down the tree because you know there's not a lot of gunplay in Canada or whatever. So they try to climb up the tree after him, but he has the advantage, you know, and kicks them down and everything. So finally they give up trying to get him out of the tree, and they just say, "Well, you can't go anywhere, so we're going to wait for you to come down that tree, and then we're going to kick your ass or whatever." Right? So, anyways, it's and the banter between those on the you know those on the ground and him in the tree where he starts manipulating them psychologically, you know, trying to pit them against each other and everything. It was really interesting for me to uh, that film, even though it takes place in a park with a tree and a basically a picnic table and a bunch of people, and that's it. So kind of like reminded me of Cujo in a way. If you ever seen that film, where all it is a house, a car, a dog, and some actors, right? So there is no. It's just a tree in the park, right? So, and if you have no movement in your film, then you better have good dialogue, and you better have a good storyline. And Cujo had the action part with the dog, and that's what scared the living crap out of everybody. Um, and it was a confining type of film. This film has really good dialogue in it, right? Um, so it's fun to listen to the dialogue. It's really how people manipulate each other and everything. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that film. It's called Treed, Treed, like up a tree. Treed Murray. Murray is Hewlett's name in the film, and it was done by William Phillips, who directed this film. So I'm probably going to like this film as well if I like Treed Murray. All right, so a Canadian director that maybe you should look for is William Phillips. All right, so that's Gunless. Next up is the Ford at Fox collection, Hangman's House, and Three Bad Men. It's two early films by John Ford, one of the greatest American directors of all time. You know him from all of his westerns, like Who Shot Liberty Valance and other things. Um, these are his early films. So Ford has been around since almost the beginning of cinema. I mean, he's dead now, but he was around for the beginnings of cinema, and he did silent films. And this is an early western of his called Three Bad Men, which he put out in I think 1926. All right, and it was a silent film. And this one here, Hangman's House, I don't know a lot about that film, but I know that it's his last silent film before he started going into the quote unquote the talkies, right? Um, so these two early films, I came across this in the thrift store and said, John Ford, you got to get that, all right? And then I saw up there it said the Ford on Fox collection. So usually that means there's other ones that will have the same banner. So when I looked inside of it, I saw this, all right, and it's an advertisement for it. So it's Ford on Fox collection, and basically you can collect Ford on Fox in three different ways. All right. So the first way, and probably the most popular way, would be this box set of 21 discs that show 24 of his early. I don't know if they're all silent films, but his early films. You get a good because a lot of his silent films are actually lost. From my understanding, a lot of them are lost, but you get like 21 of his early films on this box set. It's out of print, so you may have difficulty finding it. I looked it up on eBay, and used copies of this go for maybe $60, $70. New copies are in the $200 range. All right, so people have them, they bought them, they never watched them, and now they're reselling them, right? And because it's out of print, kaboom, it goes up in price, $200. All right, so to get this collection new. All right, and then you have three smaller collections. All right, which is the Essential John Ford, the Silent Epics collection, and the American Comedies collection in three different box sets. And those ones are going in the $30 range each. All right. So, and then you have what this is part of, and it's those individual discs that you can buy one at a time. All right. And there's one, two, three, four, eight of them. And then a ninth one, which is a documentary on John Ford. And then you have a lot of these are twofers where you have two films on one disc or in one package. And some of them are just single films. And there's like eight DVDs for it. I mean, well, I don't know how many DVDs, but eight DVD cases or eight selections of them, right? So if you like John Ford's westerns later on, like Who Shot Liberty Valance came out in 1962, all right? It stars I think actually I have the Blu-ray of it is I have the Blu-ray. Anyway, so it came in '62, and John Wayne was in it, and what was the other guy? What was the other guy? James Stewart was in it, and Lee Van Cleef was in it, and Lee Marvin was in it. One of the greatest westerns of all time. But that was in the '60s. So imagine he's been around since the '20s all the way up to what I think, like maybe the '70s. But he's John Ford is like one of the great American. When you talk about great filmmakers, you talk about guys like Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, and he's included John Ford. All right, especially in the westerns. All right, a lot of the spaghetti westerns, a lot of the Italian directors that did spaghetti westerns were because of John Ford's westerns, right? So all that, John Ford is, one of the great directors. You should get all of his movies and watch them. So I got two of them out of this. So I have one of the 8 or 9 of these that are out there somewhere in the zeitgeist. So I'll look for those as well. So two John Ford films, can't beat that. All right. So next up is the 1931 film directed by King Vidor, The Champ. Do you remember this film? Probably not. Um, I didn't know that this film existed for the longest time until I found out that a film that I watched, when I was like in my early teens or late double digit. Um, Anyways, it came out in 1979. It was called The Champ as well, but it starred John Voight as the boxer and Ricky Schroeder as his son. And basically, the two films are basically, one's a remake of the other one. The place and the time has changed, but the basic story is the same, which is a, over the hill boxer who's an alcoholic and a gambler, and he has a son that he continually disappoints. Um, but he always tries to make it up for him. But his son, no matter how much he disappoints his son loves him unconditionally, thinks he's the greatest of all, calls him the champ because he was the champion boxer at one time before before his alcoholism killed his career or whatever, right? So it's a really sad, tragic type of story, and if it doesn't bring you to tears, okay, you're a tougher guy than I am. But I haven't seen this one. I've seen the '79 version with John Voight, and it was a tearjerker for sure. And I'm assuming that this one would probably be too. All right, and because basically it's the same story. So, have you seen the film? What do you think of this film? Do you think it's better than the remake? I thought the remake was really good. Ricky Schroeder, especially, he ended up with that film. He ended up on a TV show called Silver Spoons, which was really good. And in Silver Spoons, you got to see a very young Jason Bateman. He was the antagonist guy in that sitcom. Jason Bateman, the neighbor, the irritating neighbor, um, as a kid. So it was a pretty good show when I watched it back in the early '80s or whatever. Silver Spoons, it was called. If you ever see that. Anyway, so The Champ, and it came out in 1931. And who directed it? Oh yeah, King Vidor. Now King Vidor. Um, I never knew anything about. He's one of the big guys in early cinema, one of the huge guys, and I never heard of him until I ended up um, buying this collection from a gentleman who's who a family member collected all these films, like probably around 2,000 films. Anyways, it filled up like I'm gonna say like 35 boxes, like good sized boxes of films. Um, Anyways, I have a medium-sized SUV, and it took me 3 trips to carry all those boxes. I mean, filling up the back of the US, the back of the and the passenger side, filling up it all with boxes, and it took me 3 trips to get all the boxes of these films. I bought it all for a very, very, extremely, very reasonable price, and these films, he uh, the one that got them, he was a big fan of early cinema, like the 1920s, the early silent films, the 30s, 40s, 50s, all the film noir in the 40s and 50s. I mean, he has almost every, like there's a core amount of films that range between, depending on who you read or whatever, between like 100 and 150 film noirs, the main core of that genre of films, and he has like 200, or I have them now, but he had like 200 of those films. So basically, I think I have every great film noir. I just have to watch them, right? So anyway, so he had a bunch of King Vidor films, and so look, because I went through all the boxes. It took me, because I bought it just after Christmas, and it took me until late spring to go through all the boxes to catalog them all, catalog all the films, um, and arrange them alphabetically or by director, etc., into my collection, to integrate it all into my collection. So it took me months to do it, and I kept coming across a good amount of King Vidor films. So this guy has really, really good taste in early cinema and a lot more knowledge of it than I did. So I'm gonna defer to his um, his taste in early cinema. And so when I came across this, knowing that I watched the remake of it in '79. This is the original one. I said, oh, King Vidor, I got to pick it up because I don't have that one, and he has like a lot of King Vidor films. Anyway, so that's if you're looking for a great director to collect from early cinema, King Vidor is one. John Ford is another one. All right. So the next up is The Big Lift. All right. And this film is about the Berlin airlift. So after, if I remember correctly, the Berlin airlift is the Allies after World War II, after they won World War II and they invaded um, Germany and they were in Berlin. All right. And that was the end of the war. That's when the Cold War started. All right. And the Russians were there and the Allies were there. And basically, this what's called the Berlin airlift was the Americans or the Allies dropping a whole bunch of people in Berlin to help, so that the quote unquote communists don't take over the whole city or whatever, right? So, and then there was negotiations back and forth and everything, and then you know what happened, right? Berlin got split in half. Half of it was in East Germany, the other half was in West Germany, so on and so forth, right? Um, so that's what this is about, and it's supposed to be a pretty good film, and it was directed by George Seaton, who, if you remember, George Seaton, and that's the reason why I picked this film up, is the guy that did A Miracle on 34th Street, the original Miracle on 34th Street, the one about Chris Kringle who thinks he's Santa Claus, and then they go to court and all that. And I thought that was a pretty good movie. I watch that usually every Christmas when I have actually that and the remake in my collection. I think I don't know if I have the remake. Maybe I didn't know if I thought it was that good or not. Anyways, but I do have the original, and I will watch it during the Christmas season. Every couple of years. So I figured, well, he did that film. Maybe this film will be pretty good as well. So that's why I picked it up. I haven't seen it, and of course, any film with Montgomery Clift in it from this period got to be pretty good, right? I mean, come on, the guy's a great actor. All right, so we'll see. Have you seen this one, The Big Lift? What did you think of it? Maybe tell me in the comments and say, yeah, you're going to really enjoy that film, or no, I watched it, I didn't like it very much. Maybe you'll be disappointed. All right, so next up is I Want to Live from 1958, directed by Robert Wise, and Robert Wise is one of the great directors again. I mean, he's won Oscars and everything else. And he did this film back in '58, and it stars uh, Susan Hayward, who's one of the big names back then. This is the film that garnered her an Oscar. All right, and she plays a prostitute who's kind of like always on the wrong side of the law. She's not a very high moral character, let's put it that way. And um, she gets involved with these two criminal guys who end up committing a murder, and she ends up being blamed for it as well. And the film is set up so that you're not sure whether she was, at least from my understanding of it, because I haven't seen it, that was she involved or was she not involved? Anyway, she gets convicted of it, and she's going to be put to death. And there's a reporter in it who believes her story that she wasn't involved in it, and he goes about trying to get a stay or a reversal of that verdict, right? Anyway, so it's supposed to be a pretty good film, and she is supposed to be really, really good in this film. All right, so, and if it's directed by Robert Wise, who directed, think of these movies that this gentleman directed. He directed, these are just a few of them: West Side Story and The Sound of Music, like two of the greatest musicals of all time. Um, The Haunting, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So he did musicals and he did a science fiction, right? And Star Trek: The Motion Picture, he did that one as well, right? So, and he did a ton more. But the gentleman is one of the great American directors, right? So I figure that this one is going to be a good one. And the person who bought this film never even watched it. It's still in its original plastic, right? So I will be the first one to watch this film. All right, next up isn't a film, it's a TV show, and I found season 3 of Battlestar Galactica. in a blue. Sorry, I'm going to say a Blu-ray. No, it's a DVD, but in a steelbook. All right. So this whole uh, TV show came out in a collection of steelbooks, and it's probably the nicest version of it. I mean, you can get a box set of this show with all of it in it, but you can also get each of the individual seasons in steelbooks, and they look really nice. Now I have this in a plastic bag because steelbooks are just notorious for getting scratched or damaged, right? So once you get something that's a steelbook or is easily damaged, protect it with a bag right away. You don't have to seal the bag yet. Maybe you're going to watch it before you seal it, but eventually seal it. All right, and then when you put it on your shelf, it won't get damaged, or will get a lot less damage than it would if it was bare or naked, as I like to call it. All right, so this, if you haven't seen this series, the reimagining of the original Battlestar Galactica, you are missing out. Especially if you're a sci-fi fan. Well, if you're a sci-fi fan, you've watched this show. You had to have watched the show. It's 4 seasons, and they have a couple of movies and a couple, I think, as well. Um, it 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 didn't stick around past its expiration date. Let's put it that way. They had a story that they wanted to tell. They knew it'd take about 4 seasons to tell it, and they told it, and then it was done. No more hanging around just because ratings are high or anything, right? So it's an extremely good film. It is basically like you know a movie that is extremely long and extremely entertaining that you can watch in episodes, right? It's an amazing. It's one of the great post 2000 TV shows. All right. And what's funny about it was it's took place. It was filmed mostly in Vancouver in Canada on the west coast of Canada, and most of the actors in this and a lot of people don't know it, especially those south of the border. Most of the actors in this um, TV show are Canadian. All right. Next up is So Close. All right, So Close, directed by Corey Yung. You know Corey Yung, one of the great Hong Kong directors. uh, for action films, action choreography. He's just one of the greats. Now, some of his films are hit and miss, but the choreography and the fight scenes in the films that he does are really good, and that's what he got a reputation for. The first time I seen his work was in Lethal Weapon 4. He directed Lethal Weapon 4, and he directed a bunch of Jet Li films. You know that when Jet Li was a big you know a big name in you have like Jackie Chan and you have Jet Li, right? In films, Jackie Chan, if you want to watch kung fu or martial arts films with some humor, Jet Li, uh, more serious type of action films, right? So he directed a bunch of Jet Li's films back in the day as well. So this one came out in 2002, which, believe it or not, is like 20 years ago. I can't believe it. But anyways, the reason why I got this is I saw it in the thrift store, and I saw her, and I went, cool. Now this, if you don't know who she is, her name is Shuki, and you probably know her from, as I do, from the first Transporter movie with Jason Statham, right? She was the daughter of that criminal guy in in the Transporter, right? So, and when I saw that film and I saw her, I went, wow, that girl is just gorgeous, all right. And so now, whenever I find a film that has her in it, I don't know what the plot is. I just want to see her in another film, right? But this one, when after I seen that it was her, and I looked at the back, and I said Corey Yung, oh, sold, right? It was already sold with her, but Corey Yung as well, sold as well. And so this is basically, and this is hitting all buttons. I mean, it has a great director, especially for action films. It's got an actor Shu Ki who I love, all right, and it's an action film with a lead female character, which I love as well. So many action films, you know, the lead character is a male, right? So it's fun to watch um, action films where the lead is a female, right? So, and there's basically three of them in this one. So you're just seeing women all through this movie kick butt, right? So it's got to be enjoyable. I gotta. It's going to be difficult for me to watch this and actually not enjoy it. So Corey Young and Shuki sold. All right. Next up is 1993's Little Buddha, starring Bridget Fonda and Keanu Reeves and Chris Isaac. Now, this film is directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. Bertolucci? Ignorant intellectual. Is that how you pronounce his name? Bertolucci, I think. Anyways, he's an Italian director. All right. And he did, you remember the film The Last Emperor? That was a stunning film. All right. That was a really good film. And uh, I think it won him an Oscar, if I remember correctly, but I'd have to look that up. Uh, and this is the film that came out after it. All right. So he went from one Asian film to another Asian directed film. And this film is basically about Tibetan monks who are searching for the reincarnation of the Buddha. And they find three boys who they think could be the reincarnation of the Buddha. And one of them is in Seattle. So they travel to Seattle and ask the parents if they could bring the boy back to Tibet and test him, right? So the parents go back to Tibet with the boy to see. Anyway, so it's an interesting film, but critics and people that have watched it, that I've read and everything, think it's like a pale comparison of The Last Emperor. So my expectations on the film are not super high, but I collect Bertolucci's films. So I mean, he's the guy that wrote, if I remember correctly, wasn't he the guy that worked with Sergio Leone? I think he was like the writer of Once Upon a Time in the West. I think he wrote Once Upon a Time in the West, that spaghetti western, one of the greatest spaghetti westerns of all time, and he wrote that. So I guess he got his chops with Sergio Leone, and then he went on from there and did two Asian style films, right? So, anyways, we'll see how good this film is when I watch it. Maybe you saw it. Maybe you can tell me in the comments below. All right. So next up is, speaking of a Corey Yuen film from Hong Kong, is arguably, many argue that this is the greatest Hong Kong action film of all time. All right. And it came out in 2002, and it's called Infernal Affairs. All right. So not Internal Affairs, Infernal Affairs. All right. And this is the film that Scorsese saw and wanted to make a remake of it, and he did, and it was called The Departed, and it starred Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, um, and it's basically almost a carbon copy of this, except it's not in Asia with Asians. It's in Boston with uh, with Americans. All right, so Scorsese, I think, won an Oscar for that film, so that's how good this film is. I would suggest you watch both. Maybe watch this first. Um, and then watch, if you haven't seen The Departed. I mean, if you're a film fan, you've probably seen The Departed, and a lot of you have probably seen this film as well, right? But if you haven't seen this film, you're in for a treat if you watch this. It's basically a film about a triad criminal boss who takes one of his underlings and puts him in the police academy so that he can infiltrate the police force in Hong Kong. All right, and then there's another who's a friend of his who's not part of the triads, who also enters the police academy, and he gets pulled out. Um, I think it's after he finishes training, pulled out, and he is put deep undercover into the triads. So the police are sending a police officer into the triads, and the triads are sending uh, a young criminal into the police force. So it's a cop who's pretending to be a criminal and a criminal who's pretending to be a cop. All right. So that juxtaposition is just great for a story of a film. This film was so good that um, they made like two sequels to it, and those two sequels are pretty damn good as well. All right. So if you haven't seen this film, it's one of the greatest action Hong Kong cinema films of all time. All right. It's up there with Jackie Chan's Police Story and some other Hong Kong films. Police Story is really good if you haven't seen that one. Watch that one as well. All right. Anyway, so next up is 1998's Out of Sight, And for the longest time, I thought that this film starred Julia Roberts for some reason, but I'm confusing Julia Roberts with Jennifer Lopez. So George Clooney and Julia Roberts in this film. Clooney plays a bank robber, a really good bank robber, and Jennifer Lopez plays a cop. And basically, there's some friction and heat between the two of them, and they're on opposite sides of the law, and that creates a tension. And this is supposed to be a pretty good film when it comes to that. And but the reason why I got that is because it's directed by Steven Soderbergh, and I collect Steven Soderbergh films, from the Ocean's films, and his first film was Sex, Lies, and Videotapes. First great one. I think it was his first film overall, but that was a great film. Traffic he also did in Ocean's 11, 12, and 13, and he maybe that's why. Maybe I'm confusing Jennifer Lopez with Julie Roberts because of Aaron Brockovich, because um, Aaron Brockovich is another Soderbergh film, right? So the connection might have jumped uh, from one movie to the other, right? So I'm probably thinking that a good amount of people have seen this film. What do you think of it? Uh, do you like Soderbergh as a director? Um, I like the Ocean's films. I didn't think they were, you know, super amazing, but I really did like Aaron Brockovich. I really enjoyed that film. All right, and I really did like Sex, Lies, and Videotapes. So he's in my collection of directors. So that's why I picked that one up. All right. Next up is a very campy movie. All right, came out in 2007, and it's called Flight of the Living Dead. Not Night of the Living Dead, but Flight of the Living Dead. And it's basically snakes on a plane, but without the snakes, um, add zombies instead, right? So replace the snakes with the zombies, and that's what this film is about. Zombies on planes. I don't know how good it is. It's probably really bad, but come on, snakes on a plane. I just love that type of cinema where it's bad and they know it's bad, and so they play it, and it's just over the top. You know what I mean? And I really enjoyed it. A lot of people pan snakes on a plane, but I thought it was a really fun movie to watch, right? And and I'm thinking maybe this one will too. Have you ever seen this film? It's not a mainstream film. It's a small film put out by VVS Films, so it's number 1158 in their collection. Anyway, so Kristen Kerr, Richard Tyson, and Eric Avari um, star, and it's directed by Scott Thomas, who I don't know anything about. But when I saw that this is about zombies on an airplane, sold. All right, we'll see how good it is or how bad it is. If it's really bad, it might be good. You know what I mean? Okay, so um, next up is a five film collection called Harrowing Horror. Harrowing Horror. And it's five horror films on it. I saw this and I said, well, I'm probably not going to keep this in my collection, but I think I could probably sell it. All right. So there is a occasion where I will pick up things in a thrift store that I won't be putting in my collection, but I will say this one is underpriced, and I think I could probably sell it for more, and then I'll see if I can sell it. Right. So the reason why I won't keep this, and the second reason, well, the main reason actually, and horror is out of every type of genre of film. All right, horror is the easiest to sell. Okay, because you have a huge amount of followers of horror, even good horror or bad horror. All right, you can sell horror pretty easily. All right, and this has five films in it, all horror. All right, and so I could probably sell it for more than I bought it for. I'm thinking of it. But the main reason why I got this is because I wanted to explain something um, about collectors, and maybe you know maybe this will rub off on other people, and maybe other people agree with me and everything, and maybe the studios will get an idea about it. All right, so basically, I do not like this type of collection. Okay, the reason why I don't like this collection isn't because of the movies in it. It's because of how difficult it is to put this somewhere in my collection on my shelf. All right, so um, when you organize your shelves for your films, you organize. I organize by director. Most of the films I have are in directors. Now I have directors who I collect, so I can put all the directors' films in that section of my thing with the directors. I have some films that I don't collect the directors, and then what I'll do with those is put them in another part of my collection by alphabetical order by the name of the film. All right, so those are the two ways that I put in my collection. All right, so if I'm looking for a film, I know I'm going to look for it. If it's a director that I collect, then I'm going to go look at the director, and if it's a director that I don't collect, I'm going to go look for it in alphabetical order. This does not fit either one of those, all right? And most people put their collections in alphabetical order. So where would you put this, all right? So the only place you can put this in, it would be you would make a section. Maybe you have yours split up into different genres. So you'll have a horror section, you'll have an action section, you'll have a drama section, you'll have, uh, you know, whatever other my mind has gone blank of the different genres, right? So, and then you'll put this in the horror section. But then where are you going to put it in the horror section? If you're doing it alphabetically, this looks like it's called harrowing horror. So you would put in H for harrowing horror. So now let's say you do that. You put that in harrowing horror. Now, you probably, if you have enough films, you probably have a database of all your films. Maybe use a software program on your phone or your computer. Maybe use the IMDb. That's what I use. All right, I use the IMDb, and rateyourmusic.com has a good way of putting your collection online for both music and for films. All right, so I use both of those, and to categorize my films. So if I'm looking for a film, I just have to look on my phone, put the name of the film in, and I'll know what I have. All right, whether I have it in Blu-ray or DVD, whether I have it in both, and or I don't have it. Right. Um, so I'm gonna list these. Let's say I put this in my collection. I'm gonna say I have The Exorcist. I'm gonna say I have the remake of Friday the 13th. I'm gonna say I have It. I'm gonna say I have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. I'm gonna say I have Hidden. All right. So I know that I have them. So let's say I'm out and let's say I find Hidden on a DVD or a Blu-ray or whatever. So then I go look at my collection, and it shows that I have it on DVD. So I go, okay, I already have this, but I haven't watched it yet. I want to watch it when I get home. So I get home, and I go to my shelves and I start looking for it. I look in the H section. I look up what the director is because I don't recognize that film, and I find that it's not a director that I collect, but I have it in my collection, right? So I go to it's called Hidden. So I go to HI in my collection, and it's not there either. And I'm going, okay, it's got to be in a box set somewhere. So now I got to look through all, and I have like dozens of box sets. Where am I going to find that, right? You know what I mean? Box sets like this, well, this isn't a box set, but collections like this make it very frustrating to actually try to find and watch the film, all right? You may watch the film if you go, okay, I'm in the mood for a horror film, so you go to your horror section if you have it that way, and you go, oh, here's 5 films, I'm going to watch 5 films, and then you pull it out and go, oh, that's where Hidden is. I would have never found that, right? So that's the reason why I don't like these kind of collections. Collections like this should only be, in my personal opinion, all right, you may think differently, in two versions. Number one is the franchise. So if you have Friday the 13th, and you have the franchise, so you have all the films in a box set, or you have all the films together, you're going to have it all together in F anyways, right? So in a box set of that franchise, whether it's Die Hard, Aliens, Friday the 13th, Halloween, whatever, you have them all in a box set, and you have them all in the same place in your collection, and they're easy to find, okay? So you don't want to have Halloween and Friday the 13th in the same box set, because are you going to look for it in H, or are you going to look for it in F, right? You get lost, right? So it's just too complicated. Or the second type of thing like this is by director. So if you have, let's say you have 5 films by Steven Spielberg, that is perfect for me because I collect Steven Spielberg. So I could have these 5 films all in one box set, not an individual, this thick on my shelf instead of like 5 films, which may be this thick, and it saves me space on my shelves, and I still have all 5 of the films, and I can still find them because they're all Steven Spielberg films, or they're all Clint Eastwood films, or they're all, whoever, William Wyler films, or whatever, right? So those are the two ways that if you're going to put a collection together, that's the way that they are. So these things I avoid like the plague, all right? I would rather have the individual films that occupy more space on my shelf so that I can actually find them easily, than have this thing on my shelf and never know where the films that are in it are. All right. Now they have the original Exorcist. If you haven't seen that film, go see that film. And if I had that collection and I had to keep it, that's where I would put this collection. I would ignore the other four films, and I would put this in William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist, and I put it in that section. And that way, at least I know where The Exorcist is, and that's the film that I'm probably going to watch the most, anyways, right? So maybe that's the way to do it, but I'm just going to probably resell this. So it has The Exorcist, which is one of the greatest um, horror films of all time. I mean, the 360 incident there. I'll call it the 360 incident, so people that haven't seen the film don't know what I'm talking about, so I don't spoil it for them. The 360 incident, you'll know if you've seen the film. Um, Man, when I saw the first time I saw that, that just nightmares, man. All right, so that's one of the greatest. Came out in '72. Then you have a remake of both Friday the 13th and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre by the same director, and his name is Marcus Nispel, 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 ignorant intellectual, don't know how to pronounce people's names. All right, so he did both remakes of them, and both of them, I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why Hollywood remakes films. Um, if you're going to remake a film, a horror film, why don't you remake a horror film or another film to improve it, right? To make it better because it bombed the first time it was out. So take a film that wasn't done properly, do a remake of it because the idea of that film was good, just the execution of it just sucked, all right? And take that film and make a remake out of it and make it a good film, all right? Why are you taking films that are great in their own genres, right? Like when you think of the great films in the horror genre, you're going to come up with Friday the 13th, and you're going to come up with Toby Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Come on, you are going to come up with those films because they were great horror films. So why do remakes of them? I know why they do it because of the name recognition, and they do it. You ever notice they do it every 20 years or so that they'll make the remakes? And the reason why they do it is because there's another generation of human beings that are hitting, 18, 19, 20 that maybe didn't see the originals, and maybe these films will be their Friday the 13th, like my Friday the 13th was for me when I was young, or my Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was young, or whatever, right? So maybe these will be that for the 30 somethings now, because I think these both came out in the early 2000s, right? Anyway, so they do it every 20 years or so, 25 years. They'll do remakes of great films, um, just so that they can bring it to a new audience, because some people just won't go back and watch older films, right? They just want to watch new films, right? So I guess that's for them, and plus the recognition of the brand makes the film you know uh, safer to be a success, even though some of them aren't, anyways, right? And Hidden, I haven't seen, but Hidden is about, I think it's like a zombie attack or whatever. But this family finds this a bomb shelter, uh, and goes into this bomb shelter. And it's supplied with food and everything so that they could live underground in this bomb shelter, away from whatever shit is happening above them, and they hear it, right? And they're being quiet so nobody detects them. But finally, those, what if they're zombies or whatever they are, above them, start figuring out that they're below there, and then they start trying to get into the bomb shelter. And it's a psychological horror thriller type of idea, from my understanding. So it may be pretty good. I don't know. I haven't seen it, so maybe I'll watch that before I sell it. I'm not sure. Did you ever see the movie Hidden? Like, I really have no interest in seeing it, because I read the book, and about halfway through the book, it turned my stomach. And I didn't read Stephen King after that. Before that, I read like everything by Stephen King, but it is the one that turned my stomach, for not for a horror reason, but for a disgusting. Anyway, and then I just haven't followed him. And Stephen King films are hit and miss. More of them are hit than miss, but a lot of them are misses. You know what I mean? So I don't have any interest in Pennyworth being an alien and coming after kids. Anyway, so I'll probably never watch that film. I have no interest in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake or the Friday the 13th remake. The originals are good enough for me, and The Exorcist is the original, and I'll watch that 100 times. So it's hidden that's the curiosity in this one that I may watch. All right. If you've seen it, let me know what you think on it. All right. So next up is Pirate Radio. It came out in 2009, and it is directed by Richard Curtis. Richard Curtis, who did Four Weddings and a Funeral. That film, right? You remember that film? And he did Love Actually. So Love Actually, along with When Harry Met Sally, all right, um, are two of my all-time favorite like romantic comedy films. All right, and Love Actually is just a stunning film. It is an amazingly great film. If you're turned off by or try to avoid romantic comedies because they're chick flicks and you're not a chick, um, the male audience that's listening to me right now, make the exception and watch Love Actually because that is an extremely good film. All right, so he's the one that did that. So I collect him. All right, and he also did the Bridget Jones' Diary, which was pretty good as well. But anyway, and Notting Hill. But this one, Pirate Radio, is about a group of guys who, because the British government banned rock and roll off the airwaves, have a ship out at sea off the coast of England and are broadcasting pirate radio, broadcasting rock and roll to the masses in London and elsewhere in the UK, right? So it's supposed to be a really funny comedy, and I loved Love Actually. So let's see how he does by with the comedy. And I mean, it has Philip Seymour Hoffman, who great actor, right? And you'll be familiar with a bunch of the British actors that are in this as well. I mean, you have what's his name from who's Simon Pegg's partner in Shaun of the Dead in those films. What was his name? Nick Frost. Yeah, Nick Frost. So it has Nick Frost in it and others. Um, what's his name in it? The rock star from Love Actually is in this film as well. Anyway, so it's supposed to be a pretty good film, so I'll probably enjoy watching it when I do. All right. Next up is this Japanese film, and this spawns a little conversation from me. Hopefully, I'm not boring the hell out of you. But there's you ever notice there's a film that you really enjoy that you've been looking forever for and you just can't find it. All right, I have a group of those. I already mentioned Cold Comfort. That's one. Whale Music is another one. It's another Canadian film. Exotica is another one. That Adam McGoyan film, Exotica, um, and Whale Music. I already said, and the foreign films, the outside Canada films that I've been looking for forever, was this one. All right, and Gregory's Girl, the British film, the English film. You remember that film from the 80s? Man, I love that film. It's such an amazing film. And there were some others, but I have found those. I was looking for Mon Oncle Antoine, which is one of the great Quebecois films, and Love and Donuts, which was another Montreal film. I found those two. Um, Porky's in widescreen, it's extremely hard to find. Every copy of Porky's I look for, which is a um, another Canadian film, even though it takes place in the South in the United States. Um, that is a hilarious film as well, by Bob Clark. You know, the guy that did A Christmas Story. So he did A Christmas Story, and he did one of the greatest horror films of all time that spawned on and influenced Halloween. And that was called A Black Christmas. And then he did Porky's, and that was a friggin' I laughed my ass off because I was at the perfect age to watch that. I was like 16, I think, when I watched that, around 16, 17. When I watched that, it's like a teenage sex comedy, right? So, fuck did I ever laugh at that when I saw that in the theater in Montreal. Anyway, so Bob Clark is, why am I mentioning? Oh yeah, so Canadian films are difficult to find in Canada for some reason. Well, they're difficult to find and difficult to watch as well. A lot of them. I mean, you have some really mainstreams, let's say, like that just sweep the whole nation, like Good Cop, Bon Cop, Bad Cop. That Quebecois film. Another one was Crazy, C.R.A.Z.Y. by Villeneuve, if I remember correctly. That was a big hit in Canada. So You do have some Canadian films breaking through um, the consciousness of Canadians who are, fed a diet of American films all the time. All the theaters in Canada, except for the repertory theaters or some independent cinemas that still exist in Canada, um, all play American movies. All right, so and then you'll get a Canadian film every once in a while in that, but it's all American movies. And then you gotta, if you're gonna want to watch foreign films, independent films or Canadian films, you're looking at the smaller theaters, the independent theaters, the family owned or individually owned theaters that are across Canada, and then you'll get to see some films. So Exotica, Cold Comfort is another one. Whale Music is another one. This one was one. That's why I'm talking about this. And Gregory's Girl. So you can find these films used online, but you're going to pay a ridiculous price for a lot of them. All right. And I don't want to pay a ridiculous price for a film. All right. I don't want to pay $30 or $40 for a film. I should be able to find it at a reasonable price. All right. In Canada, especially Canadian films, but I can't. So I will just be patient and I will eventually find them, hopefully, like I did this one. And I found this one for $3. All right. So this film is called Shall We Dance? But it isn't called Shall We Dance. They changed it to Shall We Dance um, with the question mark, so it isn't being confused with that Richard Dreyfuss, not Richard Dreyfuss. What's his name from Pretty Woman? Richard Gere. Richard Gere, An Officer and a Gentleman. Watch that film. Really good film with him in it. All right. And Breathless is another one by him, but Shall We Dance is not a very good film. All right. This is the film if you want to watch a Shall We Dance film. And this is a Japanese film that came out in 1998, 1996. 1996. All right. And it's directed by Masayuki Suo, if I say it properly. All right. So, and this is a very fun and very funny film. And it's very, how would you say it? Like a feel good film. Okay. And it basically is about an accountant, a Japanese accountant who goes to work every day. He just bought a house for his wife and his daughter, and he knows that he's going to be a slave to the corporation to pay for his house and to do the things that men are supposed to do and everything. And he just kind of like having I don't know if it's a middle age crisis or what, but he's kind of got the blues because of his life. I mean, he wouldn't change it. He loves his wife. He loves his daughter. All right. But he's traveling back and forth on the train um, to and from work, and he passes by this dance studio that teaches ballroom dancing all the time, and he looks out the window of the train, and he looks up at the dance studio because it's on the second floor of the building, and he sees this stunningly good-looking woman who has a very melancholy face, like she's sad about life and the world, like her whole body and face is showing and like a melancholy exhaustion, right? So he looks at that and he gets attracted to that. He gets curious about that. So he gets off the train and he goes to the dance studio. Now in Japan, everything is about work, 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 work. That kind of thing. And outside diversions are looked on as embarrassing, right? So anybody who does ballroom dancing um, in regular life will be looked down upon. Kind of that's how it comes off in this film. So he does it secretly. All right. So because he doesn't want to embarrass his wife, because a man who's married dances with another woman who isn't his wife is a very shameful thing in Japan. All right. So he keeps it hidden. So he has this desire to learn ballroom dancing because of the girl that he saw in the window, and he wants to dance with her. Um, so he takes up ballroom dancing, and it gets funny from there, and heartwarming and everything else. And it's such a great film. And I saw this in the theater when it came to Canada back in, like, I think it was 1998. Um, so from 1998 until now, I've been looking for this film, and I haven't found it until now. So over 20 years, I've finally found the film, and the first thing I did when I found it, that night I watched it, and I still enjoy it really a lot. All right, so it's called Shall We Dance. Originally, it's called Shall We Dansu, Dansu, but they changed it and put Shall We Dance with a question mark so it wouldn't be confused with Shall We Dance, the Richard Gere film. All right, so here's the next two. The next two I found are these two: a 5-pack of Hammer films for $2.99 and a 4-pack of Hammer Dracula films for $2.99. So 9 films, 9 Hammer films for $6. Now that is a great deal. All right. So um, I'm going to add these to my collection. I think I have some of them already. I'll just check my shelf or check my phone or whatever. In fact, I think I already have this one, so I'll probably resell this one. Um, but this one I do not have. So it has 9 films, 9 Hammer films. Hammer Films is the British, studio in the 50s and 60s that were putting out independent cinema, and then they grabbed onto the horror genre and just like put out a ton of B cinema films, about Wolfman. They took all the original, black and white films like Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman and all those, and did just a whole bunch of series of B films. Most of them starring, Cushing, Peter Cushing. Is it Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, right? Yeah, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. So many of those films star those two guys. So when you're watching a Hammer film, you're probably going to see one of those two guys. And to most people my age, okay, I'm in my 50s, most people my age, Dracula is Christopher Lee. All right. I mean, as a kid, when I watched horror films, a lot of them were Hammer films. Those are the films that you watched. And Christopher Lee was in so many of the Dracula films. He became synonymous with Dracula for a lot of people of my generation. All right. So 9 films for $6. Awesome deal, right? And just a thing. Okay, so those are all the DVDs, the 16 DVD cases, and now we'll move on to the Blu-rays. And there's 7 Blu-rays. All right. Um, so 7 Blu-rays. Let's do the first one, which is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, starring John Wayne and James Stewart, one of the greatest westerns of all time, came out in 1962, directed by, as I said, John Ford. All right. Now, if you haven't seen this film, you are missing out. You need to see this film. This is an amazingly great film. All right. And I'm not going to tell you the whole storyline. I want you to enjoy it for it, and I don't want to give you any hints to it. So if you haven't watched this film on DVD or Blu-ray, find it and watch it. It's an extremely good film. All right. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. All right. And then I found Winnie the Pooh, and it's the perfect type. I love Disney for doing this. All right. Disney, most of their classic, Cinderella, Snow White, all those films, um, they put out in a Blu-ray DVD combo, which is great. All right. So when you buy it, you get both. And if you watch previous videos of mine, I like the DVD Blu-ray combos because I can watch the Blu-ray on my TV, but most of the films I watch are on my laptop, and so I transfer DVDs rather than Blu-rays because Blu-rays are such a large file. I will transfer the DVDs into a digital file so that I can watch them on my laptop. All right, so when they come with a Blu-ray and a DVD, it's perfect. All right, it means that I don't have to try to find 2 films, one on Blu-ray and one on DVD, and then combine them myself. So that's awesome. So now I have Winnie the Pooh. I'm collecting all the classic Disney animated features and the Pixar ones as well, and the Studio Ghibli films as well. So I want to complete those 3 collections, right? So all right, so that's on Blu-ray and DVD. All right, so that's Winnie the Pooh. Everybody knows Winnie the Pooh. I don't have to explain what that film is about. I also found this one, and unfortunately, this one is not a Blu-ray DVD combo, so I'm going to have to combine them and find the 2 Mulan movies. It does have 2 films in it, but it's Mulan and Mulan 2. All right, and if you notice, it has this big G in green, and I'm going, okay, that's not usually on the Blu-rays that I find, and the reason why is this. is from Australia. This is the Australian version of Mulan. All right, so it basically will not play in a regular. I don't know. It might be. I looked in the back and I looked everywhere. Usually on the back of the DVD or the Blu-ray, it'll give you the region code on it in a circle or whatever. But this one doesn't have it. So maybe it's region free and it was just put out in Australia. If it is, that's super cool because now I have both Mulan films on Blu-ray. All right. So don't really need to explain about Mulan either, right? All right. So next up is one of John Carpenter's funnest films, and that is Big Trouble in Little China, starring Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell, when Kurt Russell and John Carpenter get together, great film. All right, even ones that are bad are great, like Escape from L.A. Not as good as Escape from New York, and that surfing thing in Escape from L.A. was a bit, you had to suspend your your belief to believe that. But Snake Blixen on a surfboard. Come on. All right. Anyway, so but the film was still enjoyable. But whenever John Carpenter and Kurt Russell get together, the film is quite enjoyable. And this film has supernatural things in it, and stars Kim Cattrall. All right, of Porky's fame, and Sex and the City. Um, she's she's good in this film, but Kurt Russell and John Carpenter together, great film. So if you haven't seen this film, see it and you'll enjoy it a lot. All right. So Big Trouble in Little China. So now I have I have this on DVD, but now I have it on Blu-ray, and I'll just combine it. All right. So next up is the latest edition of Shaft, starring Samuel L. Jackson. So this is the fifth in the Shaft franchise, I guess you could say, which started back in '72 with Shaft, and then it was Shaft's Big Score, and then it was Shaft in Africa in '72 and '73, and then you didn't see another Shaft film in 2000 where Samuel L. Jackson played Shaft. All right, and then this is basically the sequel to Shaft, which is called Shaft. The first Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson in it, which was called Shaft, um, was directed by John Singleton. All right, and he's done some pretty good films. All right, and this one is done by Tim Story, who, if I remember, isn't Tim Story like isn't he involved with Pixar? Did a bunch of the Pixar films? I'm not sure. I think so though. This one, it has Shaft and his son in it, and his son is not Shaft-like. Let's put it that way. And Shaft has to teach his son to be more Shaft-like in this film. Um, so it's a fun film. All the Shaft films are fun to collect. The first three are Shaft itself. The first one is one of the big films of blaxploitation. The other two, good as well, right? So if you like blaxploitation, obviously you probably already seen Shaft or have it in your collection, right? But the two modern ones. This one came out 19 years after the 2001, right? And people still confuse the two of them. Oh, I thought Shaft was from 2000. The one with Samuel L. Jackson. It is. Oh, but what about this one's in 2019? Well, this is a sequel to it. All right. So now I have it on Blu-ray as well. So it's good. All right. So if you haven't seen it, it's a fun watch. It's not as good as the original ones back in the '70s, but it's worth your time. And last but not least are the two. I got like 9 Hammer films on DVD, and now I got 5 Chuck Norris films on Blu-ray. All right. So this is all of his '80s stuff. All right. Um, so Chuck Norris got his name when he fought Bruce Lee in, is it Game Game of Death? Game of Death, I think it was. It wasn't the Enter the Dragon. It was Game of Death, where Bruce Lee ended up entering that house, and each level of the house he got to fight a new guy, and I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was another one that he fought. But Chuck Norris made his name on that film, and then he ended up becoming an action star in the United States in the '70s and '80s, right? Um, but his early films, all right, were like karate films or martial arts films. But in the '80s, he kind of flipped over and became like a Rambo character, and basically it's all guns and very little you know action fights with your hands and feet. Let's put it that way. So it's mostly gun shooting and stuff like that. So I kind of I don't think these are great films. I mean, you have Chuck Norris fans everywhere, Chuck Norris. He's the man. He's the man. All right. So, and I'm glad I got them, but I prefer his early films where he ends up, you know, using the martial arts rather than using that, right? But 5 films. I got this for $6. Five, uh, 5 Chuck Norris films for $6. Can't beat that, especially if they're on Blu-ray. All right, so those are the Blu-rays. All right, so now we have to do the books. So the first book I'm going to show you is a Canadian book. It's called Execution by Colin McDougall. All right, and I picked this up to read, but I made one of the classic rookie mistakes when you're going into thrift stores. All right, so here's a piece of advice. Okay, so if you look at this, look at this. You see it? You see what's wrong with it? I don't know. Do you see it? I see it. It's so full of lines and underlines and with pen and pencil and everything. It just wrecks the flow of the book when you're trying to read it. So I should have looked through the book before I bought it, but I did not, and that's the result, right? So this person probably was taking a Canadian literature, or maybe a literature of World War II, or some sort of college or university literature program, and this was one of the books on the curriculum, right? So she was studying it, or he was studying it, and underlying everything, right? So it's very distracting when you try to read it. So don't make that mistake. If you're going to go into a thrift store and buy books, scan through them first, all right? And if you're going to read them, it's irritating, all this stuff, right? Like that, it's irritating. But I mean, you can still read it. The resale value of this is dick, all right, is nothing. So I'll read it, and maybe I'll put it in my. Also, the reason why I picked this up is because I was going to make a video, and this is part of the New Canadian Library. All right, so this is the 5th type of cover in the New Canadian Library, and I'm going to do a video on the New Canadian Library because it's one of the most important imprints in Canada for Canadian literature. All right, and it deserves its own video. So I'm going to do it at one point or another. A dedicated video to the New Canadian Library. If you're Canadian, you've probably read at least some of this library, either through school or whatever, but I wanted to do an in-depth video on this. So that's another reason why I picked this up for this video. Okay, so this is Colin McDougall, called Execution, and it's about the Canadian um, military in World War II when they were in Italy. All right, and it's semi autobiographical, because McDougall was a I don't know if he was a platoon leader, but he was in a platoon fighting in Italy during World War II, and this is kind of like his fictional account of that experience. And it's called Execution because at some point during these battles, I don't know if somebody deserted or somebody is whatever, but they end up having, they have to execute the guy or whatever. So that's what this book is about. And this won the Governor General's Award back in, I think it was 58, yeah, 1958. And the Governor General's Award, I don't know if people outside of Canada know what that is, but it's Canada's biggest literary award. Um, it's like the Pulitzer in the States or whatever. So it's called the Governor General's Award. And he won this for this book in 1958. So it's probably a really great read. And it's a New Canadian Library. All right. So the second imprint that I wanted to talk about in this is the Broadview Press. All right. So the Broadview Press puts out these books, which are classic books in the humanities, whether it's philosophy, literature, and other subjects. All right. And what they do is they do scholarly work on classics for the university student or the professor more than the student. All right, and they've published. They started publishing in 1985, and they're a Canadian imprint. All right, so kind of like the Oxford World Classics, or the Penguin Classics, or those style of books, or you get the academic books coming out of Cambridge, Oxford. University of Chicago is another really good press. Um, uh, these guys, Broadview, do a similar thing. So so when you read the classics or you read a novel, let's say you read this novel, All right. There's two ways that you can read it. You can read it as an enjoyable pursuit. So you just read the book and they put it down after you finish reading. You pick up another book and read it. But there's also, there's some how to explain it. Like maybe you watch a film the same way, or maybe you'll get, let's say, a Criterion Collection film of the movie, and you watch it, and then it has a whole bunch of extras, a whole bunch of you know, they they'll have documentaries, interviews, and things about the film, and you end up learning both by watching the film. You learn the film, but you also learn about how the director directed it, what the actors did. You can listen to a commentary, and basically you get an even more in-depth historical and other perspective of that film. Well, that's what Broadview does academically with some of the literature, philosophy, and that kind of thing, right? So for example, here's one of the classics from the 19th century by George Eliot. It's called Adam Betty. All right, ignorant intellectual, right? So this one has the actual novel by George Eliot, or Mary Ann Evans is her real name. It was actually a female who wrote this book, not a male. And it was put out in 1859. It was her first novel, all right? And it was quite the success, all right? And basically, Broadview gives you the novel, and then it gives you a whole bunch of other. So, for example, this Broadview edition includes a critical introduction and a rich selection of appendices, including selections from Eliot's letters, all right, and journals, and contemporary reviews of the novel, all right, and accounts of the murder trial of Mary Vox, who basically this is what influenced um, George Eliot to write the novel, right? Anyways, so you get the actual novel, but you get a lot of the background of the novel and other things that expand your knowledge, right? So you go from actually just reading a book to scholarship of the book, and it increases your knowledge, which I'm all for. This being the ignorant intellectual, right? This is how I got my education because, I didn't have the money to go to university, so I would pick up books like this from Broadview or from other presses like university presses. All right, and I would read the book, but I'd also read the scholarship of the book as well to get an idea of its place in history, why it was considered such a great novel, what it did first. Sometimes, like it might be the first um, novel, let's say. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, let's say the first Renaissance novel, or maybe it's the first novel in this genre or that genre, that kind of thing. So you get an idea of the novel's place in history, right? Or the book's place in history, that kind of thing. So you can actually just read the book, or you can read the book and all the background and scholarship that's around the book, and expand your knowledge, which I love to do. All right. So also what Broadview is known for is they will do some of the more famous literature or philosophy or so on and so forth, humanities books, but they delve into some more obscure stuff um, that is ignored, and it shouldn't be. All right, so especially from the from groups that are underrepresented in the humanities or in history or in literature and so on and so forth. And here's a good example. Okay, so here's The Tragedy of Miriam by Elizabeth Cary. All right, and this is considered the first book to survive of a play written by a woman. All right, so this this play was published in 1613, and it's about King Herod's wife. I think it's his second or third wife. All right, and it's a play about uh, King Herod, who was the Roman delegate, the Jewish guy that looked over. I don't know if it was Israel. What was it? What was it called at the time? Anyway, so it's about his wife, King Herod's wife, and so this thing I had never even heard of it, right? Because it's underrepresented in literature, right? Um, so that's what Broadview do as well. Broadview does as well is, they will. they will do more of the mainstream stuff like George Eliot, but they also publish um, this kind of thing so that professors in universities and that can actually create courses of of scholarship that don't involve, the mainstream, let's say, white culture or whatever, or the mainstream male dominated culture. They'll have, black literature, they'll have indigenous stuff, they'll have, the first female writer of a play, that kind of thing, white female writer of a play, that kind of thing. So they'll actually get more obscure stuff as well, which is also enjoyable to read to expand your knowledge, right? So those are the three books. All right. Also, just lastly, just like you want to do with books, is to look inside to see if they're all wrecked or whatever, underlined and everything else, which is distracting when you read. When you buy a DVD from a thrift shop or a Blu-ray or a CD, open it, all right, and look inside to make sure that the discs are there. And make sure those discs are actually the right discs, all right, and make sure the discs are not scratched, because then they won't play on your player, right? So it took me a few times when I was going out to thrift shops to remember to do that. Now I would go home and I'd go, cool, I have this, and then I'd open up and one of the discs are missing, or I'd open up and one of the discs is seriously scratched and doesn't work, or I open up a 3 disc thing and two of the discs are the right disc and the third one is a totally different movie that doesn't even belong in it, right? So you don't even get the movie that you want, right? So always with books, look inside to make sure um, they're they're not underlined or highlighted or anything else that if it's distracting to you for reading. All right, and look in the discs to make sure the discs are there. Number one, number two, they're not scratched, and number three, they're the actual discs that are supposed to be in there. And if they are, then buy it, right? But if they're not, you saved yourself some money, because what are you going to do with it? You're going to throw it out probably. All right. So, because usually thrift shops don't take returns, right? I mean, maybe some in your area do. In my area where I live, they're final sales whenever you buy books or um, any type of media, right? So make sure that they're in there. All right. And okay, so that's it. That's the 16 DVDs, the 7 Blu-rays, and the 3 books. And that is the end of our first thrift store haul. All right, and there'll be more of these videos because I always go back to thrift shops to look for more stuff to add to my collection and other stuff that looks like extremely underpriced, and I think that I could probably resell it and use that money to pay for stuff to add to my collection. So it reduces the amount of money. My budget can be larger for the things that I want to buy, right? So um, I hope you enjoyed this. I guess it's a pretty long video, right? Because there was a lot of media that we went through. I hope you liked it, and I hope you stuck around for the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it. It was entertaining for you, and leave a comment down below whether you liked it or not, or how I could improve the videos. Maybe I need to make them shorter. Maybe do um, 3 videos instead of 1. I'm not sure. Whatever you guys like the best. I mean, I'm here on the channel because it's enjoyable to do it, but I would like it to be enjoyable for you as well, the watcher, right? So if you like it, subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and I will talk to you in the next video. And thank you for joining me in this, and I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.